This season on the art and science of complex sales, we're thrilled to present Tales from the Front Lines, a season developed for the leaders shaping the future of complex sales. We're bringing you straight into the action with the C-suite, VPs of sales, sales development experts, and top-performing sales execs who are redefining success in the B2B world. These are the trailblazers that are tackling tough sales cycles, coaching sales champions, and aligning teams to deliver exceptional results. So join us as we unpack the hard lessons, the breakthrough moments, and the invaluable insights from the best in the business. It's more than a podcast. It's a guide to growing revenue with confidence. So let's get started.
Mike Stokes is the CEO and founder of Indicator, a New Zealand-based sales development company dedicated to improving sales and leadership performance. Since 2017, Indicator has led a passion project of Mike's called the Mood of the Sales Leader. This annual report has become a trusted barometer of business sentiment and sales trends in New Zealand and more recently, Australia. Capturing the unique perspective of sales leaders and teams on the front lines, the Mood offers powerful insights and predictions that have proven remarkably accurate. So today we're diving into the mood of the sales leader and what's happening on the front lines down under with Mike Stokes.
Mike, welcome to the Art and Science of Complex Sales. It's great to have you, and thank you so much, by the way. It's the wee hours of the morning over there. You are getting up early and bringing some value to the listeners, so I really, really want to thank you in a big way.
No problem at all. It's not too bad. It's 7 o'clock, so it's okay.
Okay, no, I thought it was more like, yeah, I thought it was I always do that. I mean, and it's tomorrow, so you're in the future. So why don't you tell the audience where you are right now, and then that'll give a little bit more context to our discussion.
Sounds good. So I'm in my office at my home in Auckland, New Zealand.
Nice. I always say for my New Zealand friends that they are living in the future. And so you are living in a day I haven't seen yet. So you're going to be giving us the view from tomorrow, actually, and you're also be giving us a look back. So one of the reasons we're getting together is you do this really cool survey every year, and you just refer to it as the Mood, but the Mood is salespeople. So do you mind giving a little bit of your background and your organization's background so we and then I want to dive heavy into the results of what you're finding out there with salespeople on the front lines.
Sure. So I'm the founder of a company called Indicator. And Indicator is a sales development firm. It is celebrating its 10th year this year. So we work with salespeople, sales leaders, and companies to enhance their performance in sales, essentially right across people, process, and technology.
Awesome. And you did this, how you got started, as if I recall, you started doing a lot of group meetings with sales leaders across New Zealand and Australia and everywhere. And you have a really unique view of what's going on in the market from these meetups, right?
Yeah, it was actually the first thing we ever did was that we started these groups of sales leaders to come together. And the reason behind starting these groups was that sales leadership, we know, is incredibly tough. It's a tough job. Your performance is always monitored. Sometimes you're reporting into people that don't necessarily know a lot about sales, and salespeople by their own nature can be a challenge to manage. And so we wanted to provide an opportunity or a platform where sales leaders could come together and share insights, to learn from others, and to really build their networks as well. And one of the fascinating things, and their membership programs. So we see these members every month. And one of the really fascinating things that came out of these groups was that every month we would get really good insight of what's happening in the world. So how is the economy going? Were these sales leaders looking to employ more people? Were they struggling with sales? What were they struggling with? What was going well? And how we came about with wanting to undertake the Mood of the Sales Leader survey was we thought, we're getting all this amazing information. It would be great to share it in a more formal way. So 8 years ago, we started our very first what we called the Mood of the Sales Leader survey, and people picked up on it pretty quickly. Obviously, as things often happen, they start small, and then they've grown over those last 8 years. And this year, we've released our first standalone Australian Mood of the Sales Leader report. And the essence behind it is exactly what we captured in those sales syndicate groups was gaining all the insights. So what we ultimately look for from the survey is, how was last year? How did the year perform for you? What were your issues? What were your challenges? And even more importantly, what are your expectations for the year ahead? And so it's been a pretty full journey for the last. Yeah.
Well, I know it's how we connected. Like I read through, I think it was 2 years ago, I read through The Mood of the Sales Leader, and I loved the work that you're doing. Like it's fascinating. It gives a great view. And I know it's regional, mainly down in the US and New Zealand and Australia, but I think it gives a great picture. So do you mind diving into a little bit about how you go about gathering the data, and then we can dive into what it's telling us?
Yeah, sure. And I'm pleased you like it, Paul, because it takes a lot of work. And every January, near the end of the January, I go, can I do this again? We want to do this again. And then we deliver it, and we have an event to share all the insights, and we get excited, and we get a very good plan, for next year. So ultimately, we started by surveying our clients. That was that was obviously the easier way to go. But we go out to our database. We also have partners that join us, and they share with their database. And ultimately, we're asking a set of about 50 different questions. So we do ask for a decent amount of time for sales leaders and also salespeople to invest in sharing that information. So we're very thankful for them to do that. And so as an example, we have about 600 responses this year, of which about 70% of them were sales leaders, 30% were salespeople.
Well, you get a good significant sample size, which is fantastic. And then you get it across industries and across people, which I love. And I mean, even if you just looking at the table of contents, you do everything from looking at 2024 to what we're doing ahead to what are the biggest things that's happening in the lives of salespeople, to technology, to the partners that delivering it. And it's a thorough survey. It's one of the things that I've found is it's really helped me the past 2 years as I've looked at, what we do, which is we're in the midst of, we work with a lot of partners. We try to elevate the sales profession through technology. And so the heart of what we deliver has to make a salesperson's life better, right? So what did you find? Like, what did the survey tell you this year about 2024 for sales leaders and salespeople?
Yeah. So 2024 was the hardest year that we've come across since we started the survey. And in fact, was probably the hardest year in New Zealand that I've seen in my career. The economy really stalled this year. So after COVID, there was a lot of money injected into our economy, and it was a sugar rush, and the country boomed. And so salespeople were incredibly successful in 2022 despite themselves. If you had a product, we had quite a bit of a product shortage at that time too. If you had a product, typically it would roll out the door. And so companies were really, really significantly busy. And we found also what was, I suppose, if we make a comparison between 2022 as an example to 2024, we had 66% of companies who grew in 2022. And that dropped down to just over 50 in 23. And to give an example, in 2024, we only had 39% companies grow. So that was a lot. And I presume it's probably, and 32% of companies declined. And potentially there is more numbers in there that decline because companies may not be adjusting from an inflation perspective as well. So it was tough. And so we found that about 43% of salespeople hit their targets, which was also a continuous drop since 2022. But the interesting thing that really came out for salespeople is we've had alongside a challenging economic situation, we've also had cost of living. I'm not necessarily going to call it a crisis. Some people call it a crisis, but we have a huge challenging cost of living crisis going on.
Going way up.
So what was really interesting from a salesperson perspective is that it was all about remuneration. Oh, it's not actually Paul, but remuneration is all about salary and incentives. And typically when we survey salespeople, the number of people that are motivated by their incentives or commissions is actually quite a bit lower than what you might expect. So typically we find 40% will say, yes, I'm motivated by my incentive, which could be part of the issue about the incentive program, or it could be that salespeople are typically motivated by other things, whether it's being the best, whether it's being the top of their company, whether it's the opportunity to get better, all of these, opportunity for pathways for development, all of these key sort of areas. But incentives this year jumped from 40% to 76%, which is a huge jump. Wow. And the way that we put that down to is based on last year, we also highlighted that whilst about 70% of salespeople received an increase in their salary, most of them received an increase in salary of less than 5%. So it was small. And coupled with the rising living costs, suddenly their incentives got really, really important to them, which again was a challenge because only 43 of them hit their targets. A higher number did receive incentives, but still, though, with those small increases in salaries, the incentive just got really, really important. So in the next year, for salespeople in New Zealand, it is going to be a really important conversation piece in staying in their roles, which is also a balance because the economy's been so bad that it's been harder for salespeople to receive or companies to give out salaries. We also noted the same situation in Australia as well. Whilst Australia was slightly better than New Zealand in 2024, they also had a much harder year than they expected. And we had 51% of companies in Australia achieve growth in 2024. They also had very small pay increases, and cost of living increases over there grew significantly as well. So they're having the same issues. They're having the same issues around, it's all about remuneration, it's all about salary incentives for the year ahead. So that's a balance that sales leaders are going to have to play.
Right. And it seems like, there are themes that you're talking about that are across, the West, across the world that you're hitting upon that are impacting salespeople everywhere. So that cost of living, that inflation it's been massive. And this is more, I don't have a study to back it up, but more from what we hear on a day-to-day basis when we're working with companies is, you're right, there's less that are growing. There is more salespeople that actually it could be a good thing or a bad thing. I'm not sure because there's not as many that are moving around, more saying, okay, I don't see that the job market's huge. I'm going to dive in, make sure I can hit my number here and do really well. And that, but cost of living and then performance, being able to do that. So that seems like what I'm hearing as well. So how are sales leaders reacting to it? Like what are they doing and what's their outlook for 2025?
Yeah, well, it's an interesting one, that one. Now, one sales leader, a client of mine, said to me recently that because they're not in a position, and they have quite a big sales team in New Zealand anyway, because they're not in a position to have big salary increases, they're spending more on development. So that's something that they can offer their people, is to get more developed. Because typically when we look at salespeople, what are some of the key things that they're looking for? And it changes year on year. This year it's all about dollars and cents, but typically it is, development is a huge one. Why do people stay in their job? It's they love the culture, they love what they do, they love the clients that they have. So sales leaders need to be right on top of salespeople, looking after them, understanding what the challenges are. And when you're coaching salespeople, it's not just about coaching them in their job, you coach the whole people, because we all have lives outside of our work that come with challenges and issues and so forth. So they need to be looking after the salespeople and uncovering, are they happy? What are the things that they need in their role, et cetera, et cetera. We had a big difference between New Zealand and Australia. We asked salespeople, are you planning on leaving your job in the next 12 months? And only 37% said no. So only 37% said no, which has, that has dropped remarkably over the last couple of years. In Australia, interestingly enough, 66% said no, even though they got the same issues. Didn't mean that they were all planning on leaving, but they would, they were either not sure or just when some cases they did say they have anyone leaving. Leaving my company or my employer. So it's going to be a challenging year. The good news for both of our economies is we're expecting a better year than 24. So that's if we ask officially New Zealand is in recession. Australia is not, mainly because their unemployment, my understanding is mainly because their unemployment rate is so low. But officially New Zealand is in recession. We asked sales leaders, when do you expect to come out of a recession? And I think, it was over 80% said either second half of the year or next year. So we should be in a better position to grow our businesses and to look after our salespeople better. But as always, the biggest goal for salespeople is retaining the top talent.
Yeah, that's one thing. 2025, and again, it's a general mood, right? As we've gone into 2025, and at least in the U.S., it has shifted dramatically. There was such a big pause and trepidation around from about June of last year until the inauguration with everything that was all the political stuff. How are you finding people are attaching to that hope of that change? Are they starting to reinvest already? Is there money coming off the sidelines to invest in salespeople, to invest in coaching and programs like yours, or is it still being held pretty tightly?
Yeah, we expect it to really it has started to kick off this year. And we have 4 divisions of our business, and we could see, different ones would go up and down based on economy and situation. And typically what we're seeing now is this increased confidence because companies are saying it's still bad, but we see the light at the end of the tunnel. And where we see a light at the end of the tunnel, the confidence grows. And so companies are now going, we need to be ready when things are starting to crank. And it may seem ridiculous, but you probably noticed this, yourself. Most companies or most individuals, when companies make decisions, it's based on decisions made by individuals, right, or as a group. Everyone feels happier at summer. Sun's typically shining. They feel better. They've had some vitamin D. That hey, let's go. You're sitting in winter for a few months and it's dark and it's raining and so forth. That comes across in your decisions. I'm 100% sure of that.
Oh, eternal hope in the summer, man. Absolutely, 100%.
Yeah,
that's why I'm on the opposite side of the world. So it is dark. It is rainy. My compatriots in Sweden have 6 hours of sunlight. So it is one of those things you definitely 100% feel that.
Yeah, absolutely. And one of the things that typically we find businesses, and we had an election in 2023, which really caused a slowdown in the economy as well, because businesses, they don't like uncertainty, and particularly if it's going to be close and you don't know who's going to win and people often stop making decisions. So we definitely see the confidence beginning to increase now.
Well, as the confidence increases, you talked a little bit about development, right, and people's expectations around development, and I know salary and I can't even say the word. Remuneration. Yes. Sorry about that. Is a massive concern when it's tough to pay rent, right? Or tough to pay your mortgage, or that becomes number one. But how are you seeing companies right now and sales leadership invest in development? Or are you seeing people dive in and invest in more coaching and training, or has that been on pause for a while?
Actually, sure. Last year, we saw small to mediums pull back on investing. Big business investors, particularly from a training element. And we're now seeing those small and medium businesses crop up again for those very reasons we just spoke around, confidence and, understanding that the economy is going to get better. The biggest thing that we saw when we asked sales leaders what was the number one thing that they wanted to improve their knowledge, and probably no surprise that AI and technology came to the top. that was their number one in strategy, and also coaching salespeople were the top three. But sales leaders are typically quite poor in investing in themselves, so they're more thinking often about their teams. And right now, this time of the year, we see a number of conferences happening. We see training happening, really from a perspective of let's get the year going, let's build on the culture, let's get excited about the year ahead. And we're sort of opening up. We're starting to see more and more companies start to invest more around their process and their structure around what they're doing. We feel that fell off for a lot of companies last year in particular, where they didn't necessarily invest in the process. So, and we also noted, interestingly enough, a couple of interesting things. When we look at the industries that did well, both in Australia and New Zealand, technology was the most common in terms of the companies that had grown. They grew. However, the companies that increased their investments in technology was slightly lower from 2023, which was a slight surprise. But we do recognize that it is, that people are talking about it a lot. It's in the media a lot, particularly around AI, and they are looking to get on those pathways. But usually we find that companies in the sales space are typically slow to invest in AI and tech. Salespeople, we know, to jump from 22% of those using AI in 23 to 56% in 24. Similar numbers in Australia. And but companies as a whole investing in tech in the sales arena still sitting on their hands.
Yeah, I noticed that again just through selling and our partners out there, is that AI almost put the two letters AI almost put a pause on a lot of the technology market. I mean, there was some that moved forward in a big way, but for a lot of it was people had no idea how to use it, and like zero idea. And so coaching, it makes a ton of sense to me that coaching is on the rise because people need that ability to grab information and make sense of it. Right. And then as AI gets more adopted, I bet in your survey next year, there's instead of 50% using it, it's going to be about 82%, and companies will be up to about 50% because companies have lagged way behind in it. So how do you help people, how do you dive in and help people then make sense of what is happening in technology now and what's coming in the future? Like, I know the mood is one thing, but are you monitoring that in any way and helping them kind of implement good and strong technologies for sales?
Yeah, we have a technology, part of our company. I think one of the issues that we see is, particularly at the moment, is that there's a lot of flashing lights and people are getting excited about various things. And so they're running towards that without, using their foundational technology really well. And, we're also, that's something we've also done. I mean, we have so many different apps and tools and things running that, it's almost hard to keep up. But I think that's probably the biggest issue, is that people don't necessarily know where to start. And, we still see a lot of companies, and this will be no surprise to you at course, Paul, is that a lot of companies use their CRM very of course. Most companies, certainly in Australia and New Zealand, most professional companies are using CRM. They're not using all the functionality of their CRM, of course, and a lot of them are using it badly. So they're missing out on opportunities. And we still see, I had a conversation with a leader yesterday who was dead against CRM and so forth. And I said to him, it's probably, based on, what you're telling me now, it's probably not an argument I'm going to win, but I will tell you that if used well, it's a phenomenal tool. So I think trying to make it simple. Quite often, one of my team was talking to someone who had no idea how to use technology and was sort of dead against it, even though didn't know anything about it. This was particularly around AI, and she showed them how to use, may have just been ChatGPT or something like that, and just completely blew his mind, particularly around how easy it was to use. I guess my thought process around that is don't throw everything at a company first. Just use some tools well, and then continue to relook at that strategy and to focus on, what's coming out into a marketplace, because there's things just coming out everywhere, which is exciting, but also quite daunting as well, depending on what side of the fence you sit on.
I coined this, I call it the technology confusion gap. This gap between our ability to execute and implement what we have now versus what's coming next. And the insane amount of resources that are spent, a lot of that by salespeople, their managers, their IT teams that are trying to close that gap. I'm wondering if you agree with this, because I think this is the most important part of it when you're talking technology, is define the processes you want to use first and how you're going to work as a company, and define your sales process, and then evaluate the technology, then put the things in terms of what you're trying to accomplish and how you're trying to accomplish it, and see if it'll support it. I think many people have that backwards. They just go buy stuff off the shelf 3-4 different times a thing, because they're going to say, I'm going to have a point solution and I'm going to just do everything. And that's where that confusion gap comes in. And it actually kills a lot of good investment. But I don't know. Do you see that a lot?
I completely agree. I mean, it is an enabler. It is an enabler to enable you to do what you do better. The one, I think, caveat in that space is there are things coming out that you go, wow, I didn't know that could happen. So potentially that could, change the way that I do this process or blah, blah, blah.
Yep. But
yeah, I understand. 100%. You do run the risk of I suppose, letting it lead you more than the other way around. I saw a great quote the other day around AI, and I'm sorry, I don't know who said it, but they were talking about the phone and the wave, and the idea was to ride the wave, not the phone. So the phone, the way that I took it was, the hype and the constant people talking about it and getting excited about it and things like that, and the wave is actually the real value that it can add to your business.
I really like that. Of course, you'd bring that up surfing down in New Zealand too. But that's a great one. Hey, if we're running up on time here, how do people get a hold of this mood of the sales leader report?
Easiest way just to go to indicator.co.nz website. So that's indicator, fire indicator spelled the same way, .co.nz for New Zealand. And both Australian and New Zealand reports are there.
And we'll make sure to put that link in the description for this and everywhere we put it. And if somebody wants to chat with you about it, how do they find you?
LinkedIn is always the best way.
Okay.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Okay. Absolutely. Well, I love the work. Like I said, I absolutely love the work you're doing. This has been extremely helpful for me reading it over. Highly urge anybody that's listened to this, make sure you go and read the Mood of the Sales Leader. Even if it's not in your region, in your area, make sure you read it through, because it's fascinating. It's really well done, and it's put together in a way that gives you actionable results. So I truly appreciate that, Mike, and I appreciate the investments you're making in salespeople around the world. It's very good stuff.
Thank you, Paul. I really appreciate that. Yeah, it's I think the really good message there that we'd love to get across is the amount of insights that salespeople and sales leaders have. That they are the ones that are at the coalface, that are hearing from their customers. This is going well, this isn't, we're going to look to invest in this, etc. They're the ones with the ears to the ground. And so if you want to know what's happening in the economy, perhaps talk to a sales leader or a salesperson, because they're likely to know.
I was talking to somebody earlier today, and we likened it to a fulcrum. A sales leader, the sales leader is the fulcrum, right? They give you the leverage on that lever. The good ones give you lots of leverage and tons of information. So you collecting this from the fulcrum, from the people out there, it's awesome. Thank you.
Thank you, Paul. Appreciate that.
All right. Well, everybody, please make sure that you go down to the link below in the show notes. Make sure you download this report.
Hopefully we give Mike thousands of downloads and people checking this stuff out. Please connect with Mike online. And as always, keep shining bright. Have an amazing day. And click like, click subscribe, click share, and we'll close out for today. Thanks so much.
Hey, everybody. Thank you. Thank you for listening to this episode of The Art and Science of Complex Sales. I hope today's conversation provided you with valuable insights and practical ideas to help you and your team elevate the profession and succeed in today's complex world. This podcast is brought to you by Membrane.com. Membrane is the B2B growth platform for CEOs, sales leaders, and sales executives who are committed to sustainable growth and change. If you enjoyed this episode, do us a favor, like, subscribe, share it with your network. Your support really helps us bring more valuable insights from the best in the business straight to you. Also, check us out at Membrane.com. We're more than a technology. Membrane equips your teams with the expert coaches and trainers, amazing sales methodologies, process, people, and tools to continually improve and coach results. More than a CRM, it's a network, and it's designed to help your team execute with confidence, smash goals, and overall up your sales game. So we'll see you next time for another episode of The Art and Science of Complex Sales. And until then, as always, keep shining bright.